They actually pay children to tattle on their parents. Kind of like the drug war, another perfect case point example of problem reaction solution, creating secret police and highly militarized teams to strike out against the American people on a host of political issues, using the drug war as the crisis. We'll now examine the phony drug war and bring forth some of the real evidence of who's behind the importation of these deadly narcotics. Who is this young man, this new SWAT officer out in Miami? And this gentleman. All part of terror. It's obvious. Why would anyone be wearing a Jason mask? And while they're gearing up to disarm the American people, they're arming themselves to the teeth. I wonder what's going on here, all this paramilitary training. Going back to the 70s, they conditioned us on television with shows like Special Weapons and Tactics. Yes. They're just keeping us safe from that horrible scourge of drugs, narcotics. Funny, the more drug interdiction, the more funding, the more drugs get out on our streets. Since 1993, triple the heroin's been shipped into the U.S. That's the FBI's own numbers. Double the cocaine. Don't worry, we'll just create more armored SWAT teams. They turn the poison of drugs loose on the street, and then the low-level minions have their excuse to violate the 4th and 5th Amendment, posse comitatus, and engage in asset forfeiture seizure. But again, they're just wearing hockey masks now to, keep themselves safe and us safe. It's not about terror. So why don't you just basically tell us about some of the books you've written and also some of the documentation of CIA drug running that you've come across?
Well, I came to the table with a background in Air Force intelligence, 8 years during the Vietnam War, worked with the CIA and Air America, and so I know how the intelligence community functions, how it's organized, and after my discharge from the Air Force, I worked directly with the FBI's counterintelligence division for 3 years, and then that led me into contract work with the CIA in an obscure place called Mena, Arkansas, back when Bill Clinton was governor, and back when George Bush was the president. And I personally witnessed complicity between these two men, Bush and Clinton, in terms of transporting cocaine into the U.S. For the purpose of sale to generate money to fight a war. And that war at the time was the conflict in Central America involving the Sandinistas in Nicaragua. In 1970, it's well documented that the organization that was flying the classified material for Air America, codenamed Scatback, was busted. This whole fleet of airplanes and pilots was busted for hauling heroin disguised as classified material in an attempt to smuggle that back to Hawaii. And if you get to Hawaii, then it's a free ride back to the United States, because that's part of the United States, and there's no customs to clear.
That is documented there, but back to the absolute documentation. Tell us how you were involved in Mena with then Governor Clinton of Arkansas and President Bush, who had also been director of the CIA earlier in the 70s.
I met Oliver North in 1982. He was with the National Security Council. He's the man who recruited me as a civilian to get involved in the Contra resupply operation. He told me that this was taking place in Mena, Arkansas, that George Bush was overseeing the entire project in order to insulate the executive branch from the scheme, because certainly there were constitutional considerations there. I went to Mena. I met a man named Barry Seal, who I was told was the CIA contractor who had the contract to resupply the Contras. Sure, in fact, I found a large base there under construction. I was hired initially to be a flight instructor. I'm a certified flight instructor. My last tour of duty in Southeast Asia was to assist the Cambodians and equip them to fight a covert war. And here we were doing basically the same kind of training. This time we were equipping Nicaraguans to fight communism in Central America.
And did you ever actually see the cocaine, or you just were at the base and knew that it was being flown in?
No, after after walking around with blinders on for 2 years, it became to the point I could no longer deny what was going on. And as I document and discuss in my book, Compromised, it's a book I wrote about this subject, Compromised Clinton, Bush, and the CIA. In 1987, I came face to face with a C-130 full of cocaine, just literally tons of it stored in ammunition boxes on a flight that was returning. And from that point on, I couldn't deny it, and I asked for a full-scale investigation and went directly to Oliver North, I might point out, to request for that to occur. And the investigation obviously didn't happen. I was labeled a security risk and a threat to the operation, which clearly showed to me that this was being sponsored and sanctioned by the U.S. government.
So they were flying guns out and coke in.
Yeah.
Where are we going now today? Would you say that the majority of, how big a percentile of the narcotics coming into this nation are controlled by the National Security Agency or the CIA?
I have no way of knowing, but I use logic on these kinds of scenarios. If you are to believe the Pentagon, and I do, we have a security net over this country, down-looking satellites and radar that is designed to stop as small of an incoming target as an air-to-ground missile launched from a Soviet MiG out of Cuba. Now, if that's the case, and you can do that, and I believe we can do that, that's been proven time and time again we can, you have to ask yourself, how are all these drugs getting into this country?
So what are the drug busts that we see? Are those cowboys or people that were not inside, who are not licensed drug runners for the CIA being busted?
Oh, the independent, the entrepreneurs, the little guys, the guys with a Cessna that gets caught with a duffel bag full and goes to prison for life. The juxtaposition to that is a C-123 with 5 tons coming in unabated. Of corporations, companies, big businesses that are in the drug business and banks that launder the proceeds, and watch them surface because they would go into withdrawal real abruptly.
Well, Mr. Reed, just 2 more short questions, and I appreciate your time with us here today. The general public has a gut-level feeling that the information you're discussing is true. Even Esquire did a large article 2 months ago about it in their September issue, documenting it, DEA people, carte blanche admitting it. And we've seen articles in early '97 about the Federal Reserve Bank of Dallas and San Antonio being caught with $3 billion of drug money. This goes to the highest levels. Truthfully, at the same point, isn't the war on drugs also creating the police state that they like?
That's my greatest concern. We have not had a war on drugs. We've had a war on our Bill of Rights under the guise of the war on drugs. I never thought I'd ever live to see the day in this country that I fought for to have roadblocks, arbitrary roadblocks. Now, passengers in vehicles have no rights, as you know, that the passenger has an obligation to show his or her identification.
Asset forfeiture, seizure.
The test case before the Supreme Court as we speak is, are the passengers' belongings in a vehicle subject to involuntary search? And I believe the Supreme Court will go along and say police have the right to stop and search you and me or anybody else in a vehicle. The Fourth Amendment is worthless. It's been trampled on. It's useless. And
this is reminiscent of Nazi Germany.
Absolutely.
If some idiot wants to OD, that's their problem. Don't take my civil liberties.
To me, that person who OD'd is a lot less threat than a group of SWAT team officers kicking down a door inadvertently and shooting the wrong guy.
And saying it's because of drugs.
Absolutely.
That's their umbrella.